you're feeling lost and tired, if you're feeling uninspired, you gotta keep your head up, keep your head up, keep your head up. We'll make it through. We'll make it through. Keep your head up, don't let it drop. We'll make it through.
Hello, and welcome to Heads Up, a program that focuses on mental health awareness. I'm retired school counselor Sue Mullen, and with me today is my co-host, licensed family therapist, Diane Vaccarello. Hi, Diane.
Good morning, Sue.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Well, I am terrific, getting better by the moment as the weather lightens up and we take care of all of our technical difficulties. What could be better?
Exactly.
So Diane, the first thing I want to do is share with our audience that this is our 12th episode and that we're doing something different today.
Yes.
That rather than focusing on one particular topic, as we have done from week to week, last week we put out a call for questions and I got them.
Excellent.
I got questions. So this is not only going to work,
Yes.
but I'm sort of entertained by the idea of what happens when we play Stump the Chump with Diane Vaccarello. So we're
Fun.
so I have I've got about 8 to 10 questions. So I guess I'm just going to start at the top of the list. I've
Great.
tried to categorize them a little bit, but I'm just going to start at the top of the list and let you run with it. How's that feel?
That sounds good. I love that they were just an open-ended call for people to ask. That's great.
Yeah, and a number of people commented that they obviously have been watching the various episodes and that some of their questions came out of the episode that they had watched and they didn't feel that we necessarily addressed their questions. So that's where it came from. So the first question that we received from one of our viewers is, why were we seeing increases in anxiety and depression in youth prior to the pandemic? So this person is acknowledging that the pandemic is not our only source of stress. Why were we seeing depression and anxiety on the rise before the pandemic?
Excellent question. And that's true. We've been
Mhm.
seeing anxiety on the rise for quite some time. And I would say that the depression piece is coming secondarily to how impactful the anxiety has been. Because if you think about living with anxiety untreated for the most part for an extended period of time, definitely gets to be pretty depressing. It feels like, am I going to be able to get out of this or fix this? Is there a way of addressing it? If it leads to a sense of hopelessness around that, then depression is definitely the next thing to come in. It's not.
So where's it coming from?
So I think some of what we've talked about is the sort of pressure cooker aspect of society around the idea of we haven't done a lot with helping kids with all these added activities and pressures around grades and being, one of our shows was on being perfect, just the expectations being super, super high. We haven't followed along with a lot of the education or psychoeducation around social emotional skill building. It's been around academic or intellectual skill building, and the idea of emotional intelligence. It's critical that we support growth in that area so that we can respond and learn coping strategies to bring our stress down. But I feel like with the fast-paced environment that we've had in life, definitely in the last decade or two, we don't give enough time to slow things down. Literally, we're caught in a parallel of fight or flight, kind of responses, a lot of flee, a lot of running, rushing, and
Right.
it's exacerbating those symptoms, and we're not slowing it down enough to really stop and say, what's going on here and what do we need to do to address it?
Yeah, it's interesting because I hear a lot from people, well, certainly in my age group, but even in your age group, about how we expect kids to do things at a younger and younger age. And generally, to me, it comes in the form of, holy Toledo, I wasn't studying that until I was in high school, and now they're looking at it in third grade or something along those lines. So I hear you that we keep putting more and more on to kids' plates
at a younger and younger age.
At a younger and younger age, right.
But we're not matching that with inserting time to do nothing or to slow down or just think or relax our body. Essentially, it's just like go, go, go.
Right. I feel an entire episode coming up on social emotional learning, what it is, and why it's equally important to academic learning. So
we don't burn ourselves out or create a situation with anxiety that we can't, basically if our absorption rate is too high. It's like with a sponge and you just reach a certain limit and then everything just washes out. We're not going to be able to capture to a certain degree, even the intellectual property if we can't, absorb it.
Okay. So the takeaway to parents is watch how high you're setting expectations for your kiddo.
And the exposure, it's not necessarily that we can't do those things or have those things, but we do need to really mindfully and purposefully interject times that we can process information. We were talking at last week's episode around the idea of a really good teacher will have some challenging assignments, but they'll provide enough time to work through them and really figure things out and process that. And what was that like? You know what I mean? That's what we need to add in if we're going to, what it means we've got to take something out.
Right.
We don't have infinite resources of time.
Right. So something, as much as we've got on the plate, something has to come off the plate as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our next question, this viewer wants to know, what pointers do you have for people who are trying to be supportive of loved ones when the loved one has pushed them away or disengaged? Or how do you get in there and make a meaningful impact with somebody who you think needs your help if they don't want it?
They don't want it. Well, that's a really good question to ask, because it sounds like the person might be torn. They really want to be supportive and be there for that person, but that person they may not feel like is allowing them to be. And so sometimes I like to think of not going necessarily through the front door all the time. I use this as like a metaphor. There might be a side door, a different way in. I also am a big fan of planting seeds. Like sometimes it's just, not coming in too forward, too fast, but planting seeds and sending the messages that you actually feel are true for you. So I want to be there for you. Let me know what works for you. Let me know how. The person may not be able to necessarily, I don't know what their scenario is. They may not either can't or won't. Are they not sure how to let a person in, or they can't let a person in because they're so overwhelmed with what's going on? They don't even know what that looks like. And that might be true.
Hey, so Diane, do you tell somebody, so in a situation like this, let's say that you have somebody in your household who looks miserable, and you've noticed that there's a change in their behavior. Do you point that out to the person? Do you reflect that back to them?
Sure, and in a way that's not necessarily shame driven or judgmental or anything like that, but just as a matter of fact observation. I think oftentimes if we can just be sort of like a scientist would be, making observations and just pointing out certain things and always sort of like leaving room to be wrong, right? So it's sort of saying, I've noticed this XYZ sort of behavior or observation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm wondering what has changed or what's going on. And it's leaving sort of open-ended questions. So it's not just yes or no. Sometimes we're asking things that just have a yes or no, that's all we're going to get. But we're asking some open-ended aspects. But yeah, it's pulling some of the curtain back and just being real and transparent and saying, I see you, and people need to be seen. And sometimes they're not able to respond yet, but they're sort of like building that kind of trust that you're there, you're going to stay being there for
Right.
them, but you're also not going to push so much that you're going to push them away.
Yeah, because I think people worry that if they bring up a difficult topic or a sensitive issue, that they're going to make things worse, right?
Right.
And so the delicate balance is, how do you bring it up in a manner that lets the other person know that you know that they're struggling and that you're available to help them?
Right. And that you're basically saying, I care about you. I see you. I'm noticing these things. Is that, do you want to talk about this? Is there something that I can do that can be helpful? Is there something I can do less of or more of?
Right.
Questions like that. And really it's just letting them know that is
Mhm.
important.
It's interesting because we got a number of questions around what I would coin, I'm not the inventor of the phrase, but this concept of being in the sandwich generation. I
Ah,
mean, you, Diane Vaccarello, are a prime example of somebody who's in the sandwich generation,
sure.
meaning that you still have kids at home that are dependent upon you for their needs.
Yes.
And you also are likely, due to your age, to have parents that are becoming needier as they get older too.
Exactly right. Yes.
So the questions that came in about that, one was about how do I've got a teen that I think deserves to be happier, and I have a mother who deserves to be happier,
Yeah.
and neither one of them wants to hear from me. What do I do? Because I feel terrible that my child and my parent are both struggling, but neither one of them wants to hear from me. What do I do? So there's a big one for you.
Yeah, it still is sort of like important that we let people know even if they're not ready. So there's a stage of change model, it's called. And there's as a therapist, it's important for me to kind of assess where a person lies on that stage of change model. So I know what type of intervention, if you will work. So when someone is very pre-contemplative about creating change, it means they're sort of thinking about it, and
Right.
contemplative means they're thinking about that. After that comes ambivalent, where a part of them wants to and a part of them doesn't want to.
Mhm.
They're like 50-50 or something. And then you get to someone who is more in an action stage of change, and they're willing to or able to have certain interventions. So in other words, if I am working with someone and I am assigning them homework to do, that
Mhm.
would assume that they're in the action stage of change. If I assign homework to somebody who's pre-contemplative, they're not going to do that homework assignment, likely. And
Right.
then they're going to feel bad about not doing that homework assignment. And I have failed as a therapist in that scenario to assign something that's not where they're at. So I think in some ways it's important for us to have acceptance around the idea that a person may not be in an active stage of change. So suggesting that that they go with you to the grocery store and do this, this, and this, it's probably not going to fly. It's not going to work for them. But maybe sending a text and saying, have you thought about what kinds of things, you might need at the grocery? It's sort of getting them along the lines of becoming more active. So we have to meet a person where they are. As much as we want them to be here or they want to be here, we have to have a reality of where they actually are. And so I say that because that's kind of the big picture part here. And then again, it's communication, and it's trying to find different ways of communicating. It may be too intense for a person face to face to have the conversation, but through like a text or an email or a call, it might result in a little bit of a different outcome. So just keeping in mind the modality of how you're communicating.
Yeah, and with regards to the communication, I think also that, there's two parts to every message, right? There's the message given and the message received.
Mhm.
And when I think about this sandwich generation concept, and I've been there myself, though I'm more towards the elder age at this point, I certainly have sat in your shoes.
Yeah.
And I found it important to remember that what I thought was being helpful for my kids
Mhm.
might have been delivering or being received as you're interfering in what I'm perfectly capable of making these decisions on my own. You're
Yeah.
interfering in that. And on the other end of the life spectrum, what I was trying to do in terms of offering help to my mom at a certain point, she was saying, "What's the matter with me? Are you saying that you don't think I'm capable of doing this?" And
Right.
at a certain point, I thought, wow, really, my late teen and my elderly mother are
Yeah.
both getting the same message. And that is, you don't have faith in my ability to do this on my own. And that wasn't what I was trying to say at all.
It really is, goes from the time that we're born all the way through, later stages in life, that we do want to naturally be independent and capable to do for ourselves.
Mhm.
So oftentimes that will be something rejected, even though we're trying to be helpful. But part of it is really listening and understanding what is it that person feels like they need,
Right.
and fitting that need, and also realizing that as much as we want to help, my kids' ages are like just about 16 and 18. And so we're approaching as a family life cycle stage, the launching, of
Right.
developmentally. And, my mom, for example, is very independent and wants to actually ask what I need from her. That's where she's at right now. Instead of me asking what she needs, there's a part of that, but it's really, she wants to know what I need. She wants to be helpful in that way. Um, and you're sort of like doing all these different things, you have to slow down. I have to remind myself, slow down, to really allow for space for her to help me. It's
Right.
not always about what we can do for our kids or our parents. It's what also, are we allowing space for them to be there for us in certain ways?
Right, right. Oh, yeah, that's an interesting concept. The idea that sometimes in order for someone else to, if you will, feel better, we need to let them give to us.
Come
And
outside
we need
of
to,
themselves
yeah, we need to be willing to accept and receive gracefully.
and need things. Like,
Yeah.
we all need things, and so that's part of it, is it's not just falling on us to be the ones that fix or help or do. It's
Mhm.
allowing some of that in a reciprocal way, because that's really what a relationship feels like.
Right, right.
But it takes a little
Oh,
extra time sometimes to slow down and figure out what that might be.
right. And the idea that one size does not really fit all. Right.
Exactly.
Right. One of our viewers asked a question about guilt.
Mm,
Her question came in the form of, I'm quite a pleaser
mhm,
and I feel guilty when I have to say no about anything.
mhm.
So why was the first part, which I don't know that you can necessarily answer that one, but what do I do about it was the second part.
Yeah, guilt is something that I think is tied to a belief system or a
Mhm.
perspective that a person has about themselves or about others. And it can be tied to sort of like family rules, if you will, within a culture of growing up in, that can influence us on, this is what you should do, or this is how you should behave. So it's kind of instructional in that sense. And we start
Mhm.
acquiring these shoulds. But what I want to remind people is that we need to construct what our guidelines are for ourselves around what
Yeah.
works, emotionally and within relationships. So guilt can be oftentimes tied or associated with anxiety in and of itself. It's like a worry. It's a fear that if I do this, then this might happen, right? And so the idea of guilt, like I should do this because if I don't, this might happen. We have to kind of fact check ourselves on
Right.
that, because we tend to get a little too ahead, of our thoughts can get too far ahead when we talk about guilt.
Mhm.
It can be something that ends up, being tied to fear about something that could happen in the future if we
Like
don't.
somebody getting mad at you or rejecting you?
Absolutely. And so we have to fact check ourselves. And if that's the fear, say, is that actually true? Do we know if that's true? Um, it can be a severe form of avoidance, actually, if we are like, I'm avoiding ever finding out if that's true. There are other ways of finding out. There are other ways by even having a conversation and saying, part of me wants to do this, and the other part of me feels like compelled to do this, and talk with that person. It's may feel very foreign or unusual to bring up a process level conversation that's not stuck in the content of what's being discussed, but the process is kind of what experience you're having when a person asks you to do something, for example, and you feel like if I say no, then you're just going to be mad at me and never ask me again. Be transparent about that. Say, a part of me is worried that if I say no, and see what the person says. See if they're a person that you can have a dialogue with about that. Do your own fact checking before you even have that conversation and say, have I ever said no to this person before? You might have actually not been able to do something. It felt more legitimate because you had an appointment and that's why you said no. But either way, what did that person do or say? How did they respond? It may be somebody you can't say no to, and that's a whole nother story.
Well, and isn't it true, or at least this is an observation that I've had anyhow, that sometimes people can't just say, gee, I've got too much going on right now. I mean, you reference saying, like I have to have a root canal is a good reason to say no to somebody.
Right.
But that people don't feel comfortable saying, you know what, I just have so much going on right now that I don't think I can take anything else on.
Yeah, and truthfully, it takes practice. It just takes practice doing things and trying different scripts, if you will, that are true is better, because we don't have to then worry about these other things of, oh, then I feel guilty that I lied, or that, it's just digging a hole. First thing you do, right? Stop digging when you're in a hole. So you don't want to keep digging, but part of it is practice, where you get used to saying, and having it have a value, that when you say, I really think that if I say yes right now to that, I'm only going to be giving you a tiny part of myself. And that's just not the quality that you deserve. And it's true. I really believe that when I say no, it's because I'm not either interested enough or capable enough at the time, given the energy or time constraints or whatever, to really genuinely be present or into that thing. And so if I say yes, it's not going to work well for anyone. If you strongly believe that, you will feel that it's easier to say no.
Right.
It's not a good idea.
Right. But you end up being mediocre at everything and masterful at none. Right. So
yeah, it just doesn't feel great for anyone. So I think the more we really figure out why we feel like we want to say no, and really understand where it's coming from, we'll be able to get behind that a lot better and a lot more authentically.
And that, after all, is the point, right?
It is.
To be real.
Yeah, and to give yourself what is the word? Basically trust yourself that that you can try this as an experiment, with various people. Maybe somebody that it might feel a little bit easier doing that with, and building yourself, basically getting into attunement with it. You'll get better and better at it. But part of it is when you do it and it's successful, meaning nothing bad happens. Again, that's why it's tied to anxiety slightly, because that same symptomology of like something, it's catastrophic thinking, something bad's going to happen. But if you do it and it feels good, it can actually feel good. And then it creates a new kind of feedback loop around setting limits and boundaries that are healthy, sometimes meaning saying no. It actually can feel good. And you can be like, yeah, that was the right choice.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent advice from our expert. I'm hoping that our viewing audience is not going to find it catastrophic that we're going on hiatus for a while.
Yes, we have what did they call, like a season? We had a season.
We had a season, right. And we determined that 12 episodes was going to be the length of our first season. And we've accomplished our goals at reaching those 12 episodes.
Yes.
But I know that people are going to have questions about when we're coming back, how to access us. So the first thing that I will share is that all of our broadcasts of Heads Up can be found on BCTV on demand.
Yes.
So if you're dying to see the two of us sitting face to face talking to each other, then the easiest thing to do is to go to bedfordnewhampshire.org, to choose departments, to go to BCTV, and you'll find us on channel 16 or channel 23 because we're on the Education Network and the Community Network.
Yes.
The new development for us has been the fact that Bill Jennings, who is our producer, has taken all of our episodes and turned them into podcasts for people who don't either feel the need or have the luxury of watching the broadcast, but may want to put their earbuds in and take us for a walk or listen to us in the car or whatever the case may be.
Yes.
So those episodes are on WBNH, which is our Bedford community radio station, and that is found at 105.1 FM. Same thing, you can go on the bedfordnewhampshire.org website, departments. If you scroll to the bottom, you find WBNH. Click on that, and there's a menu on the left-hand side. If you click on Heads Up, you'll get more of Diane Vaccarello and Sue Mullen than you ever dreamed that you could have. But those podcasts, in all earnest, are there for people to access should they have a topic or time that they want to spend with us.
Exactly. And it was great that he was able to do that. Sometimes just listening instead of having the time to watch it makes all the difference for a person. Yeah.
And in the interim, we would encourage people to be thinking about topics that they may want us to cover in our next season.
Yes.
Which I'm going to go out on a limb and say that next season is probably going to start somewhere in August. Probably towards the end of August. We're attempting to try to follow maybe a school schedule because we know that people are busy during the summer. Exactly. So that works for you. We would love to hear from people with regards to topics, ideas, and or any other questions. There are questions on the list that I did not address today, but I can guarantee people that when they tune in August, that we will not only be planning for our next season with those questions in mind, but certainly available to answer anything that people have in between as well.
Yes, we will pick up where we leave off, and we appreciate all of the viewers, the contributions that they're making, asking questions, and that's what we're here for.
All right, well, I'm going to give you a heads up that our time today has expired and that I look forward to seeing you in person.
Yes.
Now that we're all double vaccinated, and that I wish our audience well, and we hope that they enjoy the summer.
Yes,
so
have a great summer, everyone.
Thanks, Diane, and I'll see you all soon.
Bye, Sue.
Bye, Di.
You gotta keep your head